Thank you, Chris. Good morning. How's everybody doing? Great. I appreciate you having me back to talk to you again this year. I really enjoyed the program last year, the signing by the music group, and just the efforts that all of you put towards your education of our exceptional children. So the first order of business before I start talking to you today is just to say congratulations to each of you for the commitment that you make to the education of our children and the impact that you have on their personal development. You make a difference every day in the lives of the people you touch. And you give your students hope and joy and endorsement and possibilities. I love the theme of this year's program, Imagine the Possibilities. What an inspiring thought for all of us to keep in mind and focus in our lives as educators. Our job, your job, is certainly not easy. You face daily challenges, and not just with your students, but with yourself. You confront disappointment and disillusionment on a regular basis. It's easy to get discouraged or disheartened and mired in the details, and occasionally at a loss for ways to connect and engage and make progress with your students. So how do you get up every day and be inspired and be creative? How do you stay motivated and be patient and caring and persistent? And how do you keep finding ways to change and mold the attitude and the effort of the students that you touch? How do you get them to react and respond? I believe you have to have a process to rely on when times get tough, a method or a plan to confront negative situations when they arise. You have to think about this and develop it and believe in it, and then be prepared to use it when the inevitable bad thing happens. Now, last year I mentioned to you that I have a thing I call the head coach's playbook. And the head coach's playbook is something I've developed over the years. It gives me a lot of guiding principles to use in my interaction with players and coaches in game situations and in real life. So the first and most important chapter in my head coach's playbook is entitled Choose How to Respond. And it's the first chapter because it relates to the primary lesson that you learn in the game of football, which is to get back up after you get knocked down, to choose how to respond. If there's nothing else to be gained from the sport of football, I tell my players this all the time, is this is enough. The symbolism of getting back up when you get knocked down. This attitude becomes an approach to life, gained by football players through the tough lessons of getting knocked down and then choosing to get back up. It's more than a phrase, though, about football. It's a life-changing approach to difficulty and to situations that arise, and it can become a game changer for you personally. And the beauty of it is how simple it really is. Simple to understand, simple to grasp, simple to say. Choose how to respond. But it's not so simple to put into action unless you really work at it and decide to commit to it. So that's going to be my challenge to you this morning. All right? To decide that simple phrase, choose how to respond, is going to become part of your personal arsenal, and part of your teaching philosophy, and part of your daily life. And you're going to let it guide you through the tough times that inevitably insert themselves into our lives. During my 41 years as a head football coach, I taught this phrase to my staff and my players every single year, along with the other chapters of the head coach's playbook. But this one was the one single chapter that everyone remembered forever. And people have come back to me 10, 15, 20 years later talking about choosing how to respond. My favorite story about this lesson was a game that happened back in 2010 that I have to quickly tell you about because it was such a remarkable example of choosing how to respond in a very tense and unforgiving moment. So we were playing against Sac State that year, and I had a redshirt freshman quarterback who had only been in the program for a year, and then starting his second season, he was a redshirt freshman. He started for us by the name of Denarius McGee. Great player. And we had an outstanding team that year. We went down to Sac State. We got ahead 37-10, probably played the best first half of football that we'd ever played. And we got into the locker room at halftime, and I was very concerned because it was about 110 degrees in Sacramento that day. And we were hot and tired and worn out and really proud of ourselves because we were ahead 37-10. And I was nervous because I knew there was another half of football to play. And the worst thing happened. We went out in the second half. We were very tired and hot from the temperatures, and like I said, very proud of ourselves for that first half. And we went out and Sac State came back and scored 4 straight touchdowns and got ahead 38-37, and it was on. It was going to be a battle the rest of the way. What happened during that comeback of theirs was that our sideline fell apart. Guys started getting angry with each other. There was, words exchanged. There was offense getting upset with the defense and vice versa. And my young quarterback, Denarius McGee, playing in his first season, again, only been here for a year listening to the things we had talked about, started going up and down the sideline, and he said, hey, we got to choose how to respond here. We got to choose how to respond. And he helped me. He helped the coaches. He helped all the guys on the sideline to realize that we couldn't do anything about the fact that Sac State came back, but we could do something about the rest of that football game. And we did. We battled back. We continued to struggle through the rest of the game, and we ended up winning that game in overtime by 3 points. It was a defensive struggle, 64-61, final score. All right? But it was because Denarius went up and down the sideline saying, choose how to respond. There was another example, not as enjoyable to talk about, but I thought it was very touching. You know, we had a tragedy with our football program here a couple weeks ago when one of the young men on our team took his own life. He lost a battle with depression. That was a very, very real part of his world, and he couldn't overcome that. And he took his own life, and it was terribly sad for everyone, obviously, in our program and for the community, because he was a young man from Bozeman, Manny Caulfield. And once that happened and it hit the media and the newspapers, and then it got onto social media, and there was a lot of reactions obviously from the players, his former teammates and so forth. And one of the young freshmen who had only known Manny for 1 year and was a scout team player that played against him in practice and only had been in the program for just one half of 1 year, wrote in his Facebook account there, he said, Manny, we're going to choose how to respond. Okay? We're going to use your lesson to make our lives better. Okay? It's amazing how that can become part of your life. There's a lot of other ways to express this same thought. You know, no matter if you think you're going to succeed or fail, you're right. You know, things are not as bad as you think they are. They're as bad as you think they are. Okay? So we're talking about an attitude and a perception of the situation. Another way to look at it, you all know the serenity prayer. Okay? God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. However you decide to phrase it, the concept of acceptance and change is crucial for your daily decisions and your approach to your life in general. Choosing how to respond is, for me, a life-changing belief and a key to health and well-being, and I want to tell you a personal anecdote to describe this to you this morning. On November 23rd, 2015, two days after the Cat Grizz game this past year, I was in a staff meeting with my coaches. We had already met for 8 hours on Sunday to start planning for next year, and then we had already started at 7 a.m. on Monday morning to begin to continue our planning for next year, and I got called out of that meeting and informed that I was no longer going to be the head football coach at Montana State. Obviously, stunning development that I didn't expect, but it happened. And it was very disruptive, obviously, to my life and the lives of 10 assistant coaches, and we had to choose how to respond. We had to move forward from that situation. That afternoon, I had a booster club meeting scheduled. It was scheduled at 5:30, had been on the schedule to talk about the Cat Grizz game, and my wife and my brother, who was here in town for the game, both advised me not to go. You know, hey, this is you've had this situation, this life-changing disappointment that just occurred. Let's not go. And I said, no, I want to go. I want to go to the meeting, and I want to thank the people who have supported our program for the last 9 years. So I went to the meeting and I talked to the group, and I chose how to respond. And that message carried me through a 1-hour meeting, thanking the people that were there, sharing some fun stories about things that we had done in the program, some successes, some testimonies from folks, and it was a very buoying kind of moment for me because I was choosing how to respond. Unfortunately, after that day, it wasn't over. There was a huge personal kind of void that comes. I don't know if you've ever been fired, but it's a life-changing deal. All right, and that threatened to throw me into a bout of depression, really. After 41 years of going to work every day, all of a sudden, I didn't have any place to go. I was tripping over my wife, who works out of our house. She was going crazy because I was around all the time. I finally decided every day what I do now, I get up in the morning, I drive to City Brew. That's my new office, and I have a coffee that's a plug for City Brew. And but it was tough. I had to buy a new computer, had to buy a new phone. I had to turn in my truck, which I loved. I had to clean out the office and start a new life. And it was discouraging and confusing. Okay? You're not sure which way to turn in those situations. I wasn't sure where my life was headed or how I was going to respond. Then my daughter Kelly, who lives in Seattle, gave me a book. And I recommend this to anyone that's facing a discouraging time. It's called The Obstacle is the Way. I immediately read it. It's written by a young author by the name of Ryan Holiday, and it had a profound influence on my life because it was like he wrote it for me. What he talks about is taking an obstacle that we usually think of being in the way and making that obstacle a path to a new and better direction for your life. It was refreshing and very moving, okay? Because what happens when you look at life this way and look at disappointments this way is you realize that the outside force, okay, the decisions that have happened, okay, do not determine your character or your attitude or your future worth. Okay, those situations just give you the opportunity to take a new path that might be better and more positive and more meaningful than the path that you were on. This book, in other words, was saying, choose how to respond. Holiday's formula is very simple. You might want to jot this down. 3 quick points: perception, action, and will. Okay? When you're confronted with a difficult situation, put this little trifecta into effect. The first thing is your perception. You always control your perception, okay, of what this situation means to you. You got to stay cool under pressure. You've got to see the opportunities in the darkest of places. Understand you cannot change what has happened, but accept what has happened. That's your perception. Then you got to do something about it. You got to take action. All right? Don't get mired in self-pity. Assume responsibility for yourself. Right? Teach yourself. Compensate for your disadvantages. All right? Pursue the next steps confidently. Act. And then you've got to have a great will. The willpower to understand that life is a trial. Okay? Life isn't going to be easy, but you're prepared to endure and persevere and inspire others along the way. So that's the pattern. Something stands in your way, stare it down. Okay? Lean into the problem and give it everything you have, mentally and physically, and emerge stronger and better. What blocked the path becomes the path. What once impeded action advances action. What used to be an obstacle now is the way. So with that book and its reinforcing ideas as an outline for me, I began to change my perception of what happened to me. I realized that getting fired actually had created some tremendous new opportunities for me. I now have the time to read some books. I never had time to do that before. But I also have the chance now to pursue some other professional tracks and career paths that I've never had the time to think about or consider. And another byproduct that's been outstanding for me in my life is my son Scott works with a football strategy company called Championship Analytics. He lives here in Bozeman. They're trying to shop this program, which we used at Montana State for the last 2 years, to some NFL teams and some big high-powered college football teams. And I have a chance now to work with my son. And we're going to go to Oregon, and we're going to go to Iowa and Rutgers and various places where I know coaches, and we're going to talk about this program and see if they'll sign up to use it. I would never have a chance to work with my son with his analytics program. They don't have to pay me. They don't have to hire me. But I get a chance to work with him and with his company. I could never have done that if I was still in the position I was in before. So this is an opportunity. The obstacle has created a new way for me to approach my life. I'm also going to go to the Masters this year. I never could go. It was always during spring football. I'm going to go. So that's going to be exciting. So, the day I got released, we had a team meeting and told the team that I thanked them for their time, and we had a few tears, and afterwards the guys came up and we had a few hugs and conversations, and the guy who gave me the strongest, most powerful hug was Coney Dole, our young man from Huntley that Chris mentioned is playing football with a prosthetic leg. And he came up and put his arms around me and about squeezed the air out of me as he hugged me and said goodbye. But while he was giving me that hug, I knew I was going to be okay, right? Because all I had to do was look at Coney and look what he had to face in his life, right? and the disadvantages that he's been dealt with and that he has overcome to be a college football player. And I knew that what happened to me was something I could also overcome. So you start every day with this mantra, all right? I have the choice every day, all day, to choose how to respond, to make the most of every situation that arises, to turn negatives into positives. Right? See the opportunity that lies within any obstacle that you might face. Find ways to react and stay patient and accept what you cannot change, but at the same time take action to find solutions and new directions. If you do this, your effectiveness as a teacher will be a dream come true. Right? Your life will change, your attitude will improve, your satisfaction will rise, your results will astonish you. Your enjoyment every day will be therapeutic. Your motivation to go to work will be amazing. Your students will notice, and they will change too. Imagine the possibilities, the smiles, the steps, the little gains that add up to big gains, and then the big changes that ultimately change lives. That's what you do. You change lives. You pass on hope and give the tools to make dreams come true. Because you stay positive in the face of difficulty, you teach your youngsters to get back up, figuratively, every time they get knocked down. Every day you have the opportunity, because you teach, to pass on a positive perception, an affirmative action, a determined willpower that'll serve both you and your students admirably, no matter what situations you face. Because you look forward instead of looking backward, because you focus on the solution instead of on the problem, because you turn negatives into positives, you'll find ways every day to be a better teacher. And most important of all, because you choose every minute of every day how to respond, how to act, how to relate, how to envision the possibilities that life offers all of us, you'll learn how to make obstacles change right in front of your eyes, from blockades to opportunities. So every day for the rest of your life, imagine the satisfaction of taking on a challenge, taking steps that each one of these days towards a new threshold, a new reality, a new tool for success and happiness, that not only for you and yours, but for also for your students. Because there's no greater satisfaction in the universe than watching your influence transform the life of somebody else. There will be a glow inside of you that's not imaginary, because you decided, that is, you chose to make those possibilities come true. Imagine that. Thank you very much. Thank you. Have a great conference.